Rob in Chicago writes to me. He says, "Hey, Paul, I recently discovered the sound difference between USB and coaxial on my system. I couldn't believe that digital cables would sound so different. I would guess the makeup of the connections in the units also make a difference along with the cable. Can you please explain why digital cables sound so different?" Also, I recently connected my DirectStream MK2 DAC via I2S for my streamer. And why is that so much better? Well, yes, cables make a difference whether in analog or in digital audio. And I tell, I was going to say a famous story, but it's only famous because I've told it, excuse me, I've told it a few times, but we were at Axpona in Chicago, I think, which is where you're from, and could not get the system sounding right. And I mean, we kept moving the speakers around, changing this, changing that, until I discovered that somebody had inserted just an off-the-shelf monoprice USB cable that connected the streamer at the time that we were using. And I placed a phone call, actually my son Scott placed a phone call to Bill Lowe at AudioQuest and begged him to bring us an emergency cable, which he did, and it showed up. We changed it. The whole thing sounded amazingly different, and we opened the doors, had a great show. But I think what you're hearing is not the difference in cables, as much as the cables do matter. I think it's the difference between the way that coax and USB and I2S format and manipulate and transfer the data into your DAC. Those are very different ways. So coaxial is a one-way path using SPDIF, which is the Sony Philips digital interface, okay? And that's our kind of our standard way. That going in through an RCA cable or through an XLR cable into your DAC is one form of transmission of digital data. USB, on the other hand, is very different. USB uses a similar kind of format, but it's a two-way communication. It's a lot noisier. It is not the preferred way to go if you can avoid it. And for a whole bunch of different reasons, and part of those reasons is why I recommend using a USB hub or a reclocking thing like the Matrix. When you go with USB, do some reclocking. Get rid of that computer noise that, while it's present in the coaxial signal, nowhere near as noisy as it is in USB. So there are ways around it, but let's just say you have the same cable for every single one of these. The differences you're going to hear are in the way it's transmitted and the formatting of it. And lastly, I2S through an HDMI cable. That is really different. Now, instead of a multiplexed signal where we've taken the clocks and the data, we've multiplexed them all together into one SPDIF signal. Now we have separated them out in their native format. So we have separate clocks and separate data. Those go down the HDMI cable, and that's really the best way to do it. That's why we offer I2S out. I mean, we certainly didn't invent it. It's native inside of a CD player, it's native inside of a DAC, and everything else we do, whether it's USB or coaxial, is a bastardization of that format, turning it into a single stream. And that's always going to have impacts. So I think what you're hearing is the difference in formatting and data distribution to your various means into your DAC, and not so much the cables. Okay? All right. Thanks for the question.